My baby's coming. I figured you'd want to celebrate with a little gift, say $15,000. I nearly dropped my phone at the audacity in my sister Eliza's voice. After everything she'd put me through, now she had the nerve to ask me for money? You can't be serious, I said, gripping the phone tightly. You honestly think I'm going to give you $15,000? Eliza laughed lightly as if this were all some joke between sisters. Oh, come on, Arya. I know we've had our differences, but blood is thicker than water, right? It's your niece or nephew. I bit my tongue, a dozen scathing retorts on the tip of it. Eliza, my younger sister by barely a year, had always been jealous of me. It twisted into something dark when I started dating Max in college. I thought he loved me, until Eliza seduced him away in my senior year. They rushed into a Vegas wedding shortly after. The ultimate betrayal. I took a deep breath, trying to calm my anger. I'm sorry you seem to be struggling, but I cannot personally loan you any money. I have my own family to think of now. My husband Lucas walked into the kitchen just then, our 5-year-old Lily jumping into his arms with a squeal. They were my world now. Lucas raised an eyebrow at my tense expression. Who's that on the phone? He mouthed. I mimed a money gesture and he rolled his eyes. Let me guess. Your sister? He'd never forgiven Eliza for what she did to me back then. Lucas was the one who helped me move on, who showed me what real love is. I nodded and put the phone on speaker. Eliza's sugary voice filled the room. Least you could do is send a nice gift for the baby shower. Lucas set Lily down gently. Why should we celebrate someone who caused you so much pain? He crossed his arms. What's brought this on anyway? You haven't spoken to Eliza in years. You're right, I said firmly into the phone. We wish you well, Eliza, but we cannot assist you financially or otherwise. Her tone turned icy. Can't or won't? Don't pretend you're still not angry. I married Max. She snorted. So petty, Arya. I stiffened, the years-old wound throbbing as painfully as ever. Lucas gestured for the phone, and I passed it over wordlessly. Eliza, Lucas said in his detective voice, consider this a warning. Do not contact my wife again. He hung up with an air of finality before turning to me, his eyes gentle. Are you okay? I let out a shuddering breath as he pulled me close. I just wasn't expecting her to call like that. Asking for money? Unbelievable. Lily wandered over and hugged my legs. I leaned down to lift her up, pressing a kiss to her hair. No matter what Eliza said, I had everything I needed right here. I tucked Lily into bed that night, my mind still reeling from Eliza's call. Lucas came up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist. Penny for your thoughts? He murmured. I leaned back into him with a sigh. I just can't believe she would ask me for money after everything, and then to accuse me of still being jealous? Lucas turned me to face him, his eyes searching mine. Do you want to tell me exactly what happened between you two and Max? Maybe it would help to talk it through. I nodded slowly. Lucas knew the basics, that my sister stole my boyfriend and married him, but the full story was still painful to share. Eliza was always jealous of me growing up, I began quietly. I was the smart one, the popular one. Got better grades, more friends. When I started dating Max sophomore year of college, she hated that I had something she didn't. My hands curled into fists at the memory. She started hanging around more when Max came over, flirting with him right in front of me. He didn't even notice at first, but over time... I closed my eyes. I guess she wore him down. Next thing I knew, he's breaking up with me out of nowhere, and a week later I find out he eloped with Eliza in Vegas. Lucas shook his head, his jaw tight. I'm so sorry she put you through that, Arya. It's a horrible thing to have happen. I wiped away an angry tear. You know what the worst part was? She rubbed it in my face, kept telling me I was just jealous because she was better than me, happier than me. I let out a harsh laugh. I cut ties completely after the wedding. Hadn't talked to her since. Until today? Lucas finished grimly. He considered for a moment. What do you say we get a little justice, love? I peered up at him in surprise. What do you mean? His eyes glinted. As a detective, I have resources, contacts. What if we found out what Eliza was really up to these days? Because I guarantee you it's not all rosy. She wouldn't be asking you for money otherwise. Considering it sent a spike of anticipation through me. You mean, expose whatever shady stuff she and Max are doing? For revenge? Call it justice. Lucas tilted my chin up. Maybe it's time Eliza gets a taste of her own medicine. What do you say? I thought of the years of humiliation Eliza put me through, the self-righteous smirk I knew would be on her face at that baby shower, asking me for money as if she deserved a single cent. An unfamiliar anger flooded through me, but I didn't fight it. Instead, I turned to Lucas with blazing eyes. Let's do it. So what's the plan? I asked Lucas eagerly over breakfast the next morning. Lily was occupied with her coloring book, allowing us to scheme openly. Lucas sipped his coffee, his eyes glinting. I made a few discreet inquiries about Eliza and Max last night, still waiting to hear back from my contacts, but if there's dirt to be found, we'll dig it up. Excitement and nerves twisted in my stomach. I still can't believe we're actually doing this, snooping into their lives, looking for revenge. Lucas reached over to squeeze my hand. Hey, don't think of it like revenge. Think of it as veering their karma back on course. I let out a small laugh. Well, when you put it like that. I shook my head, growing serious once more. I meant what I said last night. Eliza has this coming. After the way she tormented me, manipulated Max, my voice hardened. She destroyed our relationship, my trust in people. She deserves justice. Too right, love. Lucas's phone buzzed and he glanced down. Well now, got an interesting tidbit already. I leaned forward eagerly as Lucas showed me the text. Got recent financials for E&M. Multiple weird payments from offshore accounts. Sending you records now. This could be promising. My pulse quickened. What exactly had Eliza and Max gotten themselves into? Just then, Lily popped up with her coloring book. All done with my picture, Mommy. Wanna see? I smoothed down her hair with a smile. Of course, sweetheart. It's beautiful. Over her head, I met Lucas's gaze. Why don't you go play in your room for a bit, okay? Mommy and Daddy need to talk. She skipped off happily, and Lucas pulled out his laptop, opening the files his contact had sent. My nerves spiked at the walls of text full of numbers and transactions. Lucas gave a low whistle. Well, these two have certainly been busy. He scrolled through rapidly. Lots of money coming in from offshore accounts like my guy said, and... His brow furrowed. Money being transferred back out to various charities? What? I grabbed the laptop, skimming through the listed charities. Most seemed legitimate. Children's hospitals, wildlife conservation groups. Are they laundering money through charity donations? It's looking that way. Lucas's expression hardened. Pretty despicable, using good causes to hide illicit funds. He cracked his knuckles. Oh yes, these two are going down, but first... He reached over to grip my hand tightly. We're going to make them hurt. I have an idea. He outlined his plan, the baby shower gift that would set our revenge scheme in motion. My pulse pounded with anticipation, and I squeezed Lucas's hand fiercely. After today, Eliza's so-called perfect life would come crashing down, and this time, I would be the one looking down on her with satisfaction. Let's give my sister the rude awakening she deserves, I said, meeting Lucas's fiery gaze. The games were about to begin. The day of Eliza's baby shower arrived, my stomach churning with nerves and anticipation. You ready for this? Lucas asked as we got into his car, our gift for Eliza tucked carefully into a gift bag on the back seat. The contents, a $250 donation to a charity for fraud victims made in Eliza's name, would hopefully expose her shady financial activities to her inner circle. I smoothed my hands down my dress, taking a deep breath. As ready as I'll ever be. Let's do this. We pulled up outside the baby shower venue, an ostentatious mansion that set my teeth on edge. Of course, Eliza would choose somewhere flashy to impress her guests. We walked in to find the party already in full swing. I scanned the room, spotting Eliza holding court in the center, pregnancy glow on full display. My hands tightened around Lucas's arm, time for her charade to end. Eliza's face lit up with practiced delight when she saw us. Aria, you came, and you brought a gift, how sweet. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. Max hovered behind her, face impassive. Congratulations, I forced out. Lucas just nodded, his dislike evident. An awkward silence fell. The other guests whispered curiously. Eliza laughed too loudly. Well, don't just stand there. Come in. We're about to open presents. We followed her to the gift table. I held my breath as she picked up our bag eagerly, no doubt hoping for a stack of cash. Her face froze as she read the charity certificate inside. What is this? She looked up sharply, the first cracks appearing in her polite facade. A donation, to help those harmed by fraud. Lucas said meaningfully, we thought you'd appreciate such a fitting gift. Eliza's eyes blazed. The party guests stared. What exactly do you mean by that? Eliza bit out. Max stepped forward, face darkening. Watch yourself, detective. It's interesting how defensive they're getting, no? Lucas interrupted loudly. Makes you wonder what they might be hiding. His eyes swept the silent crowd, planting seeds of doubt. Eliza advanced on us, sharp and swollen at once. How dare you try and ruin my shower with these disgusting insinuations? Her shrill voice echoed in the hushed room. I stepped forward, agnos of hurt and rage rising up. How dare you show up in my life again asking for money, as if you didn't steal everything from me? I seethed loudly. Gasps rose. Lucas restrained Eliza as she lunged at me. Her perfect facade lay shattered on the floor with our gift wrapping. Lucas eyed the stunned guests. We'll see ourselves out. Give our regards to the happy couple. He spun on his heel, whisking me away. We left chaos in our wake. Eliza screeching, guests questioning, her flawless reputation unraveling before my eyes. Finally, it was her turn to hurt. As Lucas and I drove away, I let out a shaky breath. Our revenge had only just begun, but seeing Eliza exposed and outraged felt sweeter than I imagined. She wasn't going to get away with this unscathed. For the first time, I truly believed that. And it was freeing. In the aftermath of the baby shower showdown, my phone blew up with angry voicemails from Eliza. I ignored each one, blood still buzzing from the confrontation. Lucas and I lay in bed that night rehashing the fallout. Did you see her face when she opened that gift? I said gleefully. She absolutely lost it. The perfect princess with a temper after all, Lucas chuckled. His phone rang suddenly. He sat up when he saw the caller ID. It's my financial crimes contact, Nadia. This could be promising. He answered, face intent as Nadia spoke. I gnawed my nails nervously until Lucas ended the call with a satisfied grunt. Well, it seems our little stunt spurred some of the baby shower guests to come forward. Seems they've suspected Eliza and Max were up to shady business for a while now. I sat up eagerly. What did they say? Lucas's eyes gleamed. That right around the time Eliza got pregnant, Max came into a lot of money. New cars, new house, but no one knew where it came from, and some of the funds were apparently being laundered. I clenched my fists as anger flooded through me. Of course, Eliza would rope Max into illegal activity, too. Unbelievable. Is there proof? Nadia has a few leads. Lucas's expression turned steely. If those funds were obtained illegally, we'll find out. But my phone started vibrating with yet another call from Eliza. Before I could ignore, Lucas gently took my phone. Let's give your sister a taste of her own drama, shall we? He answered as I looked on nervously. Eliza, what can I do for you? Muffled shouting exploded through the speakers, and Lucas held the phone away from his ear with a smirk. I could make out a few screeched words. Destroy you! How dare? Won't get away. Lucas just chuckled darkly once the shouts quieted. Are you quite finished? Here is what's going to happen next, Eliza. I'm digging deep into yours and Max's affairs, and if I find even a hint of fraud, you'll have much bigger things to worry about than your reputation. He paused as Eliza tried to sputter out a response. Oh, save it. For Arya's sake, I've let you get away with enough. That ends now. His voice lowered to a steely promise. You'll be hearing from me soon. He ended the call on Eliza's screams. My heart pounded as I met his fiery stare. This is really happening. We could actually take her down. I gripped Lucas's hands tightly. Thank you for standing up for me. Finally facing my tormentor after all these years, I felt empowered, unstoppable with him by my side. Lucas caressed my face gently. Always, my love. Our family comes first now. His eyes hardened, and we protect our own. Over the next few weeks, Lucas dove headfirst into investigating Eliza and Max's financial history. He spent late nights poring over records, meeting with contacts, chasing leads. I caught him furiously scribbling on his conspiracy board when I went to call him for dinner. Any breaks in the case? I'd ask. Lucas would just tap his nose. It's all coming together, but we're going to need more concrete evidence soon. His eyes took on a ruthless glint that sent a secret thrill through me. Lucas was always professional and ethical in his police cases. Seeing him embrace such ruthless determination for my sake made me love him even more. Finally, one night over dinner, he beckoned me close with excitement gleaming in his eyes. I've found something big, he whispered so Lily wouldn't overhear. A paper trail linking Max to an offshore holding company that's definitely a front. Funds come flowing in weekly, get bounced around different charities, and wind up in Max and Eliza's pockets. I finished in disgust. So it is illegal money laundering. Lucas nodded. Almost certainly fraud. Could be dealing with some dangerous people too. But, he held up a hand before I could interrupt, I haven't found concrete proof yet, just hints. His expression grew serious. We'll need access to Max's home office, his computer. It's risky, but if I can get physical evidence, accounts, transactions, contacts, we can take it to the police and blow this whole operation open. Apprehension and excitement dueled within me. Like breaking and entering? I clarified nervously. Lucas squeezed my hands, eyes blazing. I wouldn't ask if it wasn't important. Think of Lily. At her name, my heart steeled itself. I would do anything to protect our daughter. Okay, let's do this. We made plans for Lucas to sneak into Max's office the next day while Eliza had a prenatal appointment and Max was at work. My heart pounded as I dropped Lucas off down the block the next morning. He gave me a hard kiss. See you soon with the evidence to bury them for good. An hour later, his blunt text came through. Got it? Relief flooded through me, followed swiftly by adrenaline as I realized this was really happening. After today, Eliza and Max's facade would come crashing down for good. I was thrumming with nervous energy when Lucas climbed back into the car, manila envelope tucked carefully under his jacket. Wordlessly, he passed it to me. I opened it with trembling fingers to see Max's financial records, emails with shady contacts, everything we needed to expose the truth. We did it. I breathed. Lucas's eyes mirrored my exhilaration. Let's go end this. Lucas called in a favor from one of his trusted police captains, Mike, to help us take Eliza and Max down. We filled him in and showed him the evidence. His lips got thinner and thinner. These are very dangerous people your family's gotten mixed up with, he said gravely. We laid out a sting operation to catch Eliza and Max red-handed. Tomorrow, when Max went to collect one of his charity deposits, the cops would be waiting. That night I lay awake, heart pounding with anticipation, fear and elation. Lucas soothed me with strong hands, kissing away my tension until I slept. We dropped Lily at my mother's the next morning, so she'd be safe. Lucas, Mike, and a team of undercover cops set off to secretly stake out Eliza and Max's mansion, getting into position. Finally, my phone lit up with a single word from Lucas. Go. Hands trembling, I punched in Eliza's number. She answered with a suspicious, "What?" I took a breath, hiding my nerves. I want to talk. Clear the air if you're open to it. Lucas coached me on how to reel her in. A long pause before Eliza sighed loudly. Fine, just you though. Come over now if you're coming. She hung up without waiting for a reply. Gotcha. I drove to her mansion, shock nerve electric, rehearsing my lines. The cops' vans were well concealed as I walked up and knocked sharply. Eliza opened the door, belly rounded. She eyed me warily. Well, you wanted to talk, so talk. I cleared my throat. I'm sorry about how things went down. The shower, me accusing you. I should have talked privately first. Lucas said laying it on thick was crucial. Eliza looked slightly mollified. She stepped aside in wordless invitation. I hid a triumphant smile as I walked inside, blood roaring in my ears. She took the bait. Your move, Lucas. We sat across from each other in the living room I'd helped decorate, once upon a time. Before Eliza ruined everything. I took a deep breath. I need to know one thing. The money. Where does it actually come from? I asked bluntly. I won't judge. I just want the truth. Come on, Eliza. Trust me, just this once. Eliza shifted with a mix of nerves and defiance. When she finally spoke, her voice came out strained. If you must know, Max has been doing some consulting work for some very influential people overseas. Code words spilled from her lips. Overseas clients, charity projects, consulting fees. With each damning phrase, my heart pounded harder. We had her. I hid a smile and leaned forward, the picture of understanding. I'm glad Max found new work. We all do what we must. I patted her hand, ignoring her surprise. Now, can I please use your bathroom? I walked steadily through the mansion as if I still knew its halls by heart, right to the home office where I knew the cops were lying in wait. Eliza followed, suspicion creeping into her voice. Why this bathroom? Mine is closer. I paused outside the office, bracing myself. You'll see in just a moment. Then I shoved the door open to utter chaos within. Police! Get down, now! Everything erupted at once. Police swarming a stunned Max by his computer, Eliza shrieking as an officer arrested her, Lucas striding out to grip me in a fierce hug. "You did wonderfully, love," he murmured proudly before going to coordinate with Mike. I watched, knees weak, as Max and Eliza were dragged away in handcuffs, their wealth and status no match for true justice. In the aftermath, Lucas and I gave our statements, handing over the evidence that sealed the guilty verdict at their trial. Fraud, money laundering, racketeering. Eliza screamed venom at me until the end, while Max just glared silently. The judge showed no leniency, sentencing them both to 10 years behind bars. I held my head high as Eliza was led away, her baby bump and diamond rings no shelter from cold steel cuffs. She'd lost everything, her mansion sold off, bank accounts frozen, high society friends abandoning her. Exactly as she deserved. Lucas wrapped an arm around me as we left the courthouse, flashes going off around us. "How do you feel, love?" I took a deep breath of the crisp air, feeling freer than I had in years. "It's finally over. She can't hurt me or anyone else again." I smiled up at my husband, my champion. "We won." He pulled me into a fiery kiss before tucking me under his arm. "Now, I believe a celebration is in order. Lily's waiting." That night after Lily was asleep, Lucas popped open a bottle of champagne. As we cuddled together sipping bubbly, he raised his glass. "To new beginnings. Now your future is wide open, without toxic ties dragging you down. We can start fresh, the three of us." I clinked his glass gently. The coming years unfurled before me, peaceful and bright. I can finally close that dark chapter for good. Eliza wanted my life. Now she can live with the consequences of her greed. I shook my head ruefully. I almost feel sorry for her baby. Don't waste pity on them. Lucas lifted my knuckles to his lips. The only ones who deserve your energy now are Lily and I. Laying in his arms later that night, I sent out a silent thanks to whoever decided to make this wonderful man my soulmate, for guiding me through the darkness back into the light. Now the future held nothing but hope and joy with my little family beside me. I snuggled deeper into Lucas's embrace with a smile. After years of anguish, I could finally sleep easy. The past was nothing but dust. Ahead lay only bright skies.
I find myself entangled in a rather perplexing situation as I consider approaching your father regarding a troubling incident related to a potential mugging of my own father. Indeed, suspicions have arisen concerning your father's involvement in this alleged mugging. Currently, he is situated at home. Would you be open to allowing me a brief audience with him for an inquiry? The police officer displayed a momentary sense of bewilderment in response to my request, his expression betraying a subtle confusion. Despite this, he eventually agreed, stating, "Please, let me see him." Consequently, I led the police officer into the confines of my home, unlocking the door to reveal my father's presence. Upon beholding my father, the police officer was visibly taken aback by the unexpected revelation. This incident transpired a few months ago, and as I reflect upon it, I feel compelled to share a bit more about myself. My name is David, and I am currently a fourth-year university student. Despite my aspirations to work for a prominent company, there lingers an unresolved dilemma within me. The decision revolves around whether or not to inherit my father's company. You see, my father holds the esteemed position of president at a modest factory. During my formative years, I harbored a desire to follow in my father's footsteps, aspiring to become a president like him. However, as I entered my rebellious phase, I distanced myself from this ambition, feeling a sense of embarrassment towards my father perpetually adorned in work clothes stained with oil. This sentiment persisted through my teenage years and, to some extent, endures even now. As I matured into adulthood and engaged in part-time employment, my perspective on my father began to shift. I developed a newfound respect for his tireless work ethic, which sustained not only our family but also supported numerous employees and their families. Yet despite this growing admiration, an underlying sentiment lingered. A perception that the conventional salaryman, donned in a suit and toiling diligently, possessed a certain allure absent in my father's occupation. The narrative takes an intriguing turn when, during a shopping excursion with my father, we were unexpectedly hailed from behind. Turning together, my father and I encountered Richard, a contemporary of my father's from high school, dressed in a suit and on an external sales trip. Richard hailed from a prestigious corporation. In the course of our conversation, Richard casually inquired if my father had indeed assumed control of the family business. This revelation prompted Richard to express disdain for what he referred to as the dirty little factory managed by my father, emphasizing the incredulity that a high school graduate could rise to the position of president. Stunned by Richard's derogatory remarks, I found myself grappling with the realization that the factory in question was initiated by my grandfather, making my father the second-generation custodian of this familial legacy. I had long been aware that he had assumed control after graduating from high school. However, the revelation of a classmate mocking him caught me off guard. Richard maintained a silent smile while addressing my father. So, did you manage to expand your father's factory? You did mention during high school that you intended to take over the company and make it bigger. To this, my father admitted, unfortunately, I lacked the business acumen, and that dream didn't materialize. It seemed inevitable that I excelled in practical skills but lagged behind in intellectual pursuits. Nonetheless, I felt relieved that our family didn't face financial ruin. Richard chuckled heartily, playfully slapping my father on the shoulder. Well, David, we'll catch up at the next reunion. I've got more work to do, he added before leaving. My father looked slightly uncomfortable, prompting me to redirect the conversation. Suggesting a change of topic, my father proposed that we continue shopping. At that moment, I couldn't shake the feeling that my father's work had been belittled without any response from me. The internal debate about whether to take over my father's company or pursue a career at a prestigious corporation leaned decisively toward the latter. A few weeks later, fate intervened as my father's alumni association event took place at the bar where I worked part-time. Despite the bustling atmosphere, I managed to serve at the table hosting my father's gathering. Fulfilling my duties silently, I approached the room where the alumni association was held. My father warmly greeted me, introducing me as his son to those present. Though similar in appearance, I maintained a serious demeanor, responding awkwardly to the teasing of my father's inebriated classmates. Richard, seated nearby, noticed our interaction and remarked, "We met recently too, David, right? Are you planning to take over your father's small factory?" This question added another layer to my ongoing contemplation of my professional path. When I truthfully admitted to still contemplating my decision, an unpleasant alcoholic breath emanated from Richard, leaving me repulsed. Boisterously, he exclaimed, "Stop it. Your father's company is nothing extraordinary. David should consider working for a company like mine instead of inheriting such a lackluster business." Despite his inebriated state, Richard proceeded to boast about his professional achievements, narrating a career history that began as a mere assistant but now claimed the head of accounting position. A sense of unease crept over me as I sensed discrepancies in his narrative. I sensed that something was amiss, but I chose to keep my concerns to myself, wary of potential complications that might arise from challenging him. My father, on the other hand, seemed unfazed by Richard's inebriation, and, in fact, found the situation amusing. With a lighter mood due to his own inebriation, he asked Richard about changes in his department since their last encounter a few weeks ago. Questioning the sudden shift from sales to accounting, my father caught Richard off guard. Eventually, Richard admitted to an abrupt transfer, asserting that sales wasn't his forte. However, my father pointed out the incongruity in Richard's story, revealing that the company Richard proudly spoke of had actually been absorbed by a foreign corporation, with its accounting department relocated overseas. Laughter erupted among the party attendees as Richard, now embarrassed and regretful, attempted to save face but ultimately decided to leave the gathering with heavy footsteps. Witnessing my father's ability to address the uncomfortable truth that others had noticed but hesitated to mention, I found a sense of pride in his candor, even in his intoxicated state. As half a year passed since that incident, my internal dilemma regarding whether or not to take over my father's company only intensified. The confusion deepened with each passing day, leaving me uncertain about the path I should pursue. One day, while relaxing at home, the intercom interrupted my contemplation. In the absence of my mother, I answered the door to find a visitor in uniformed clothes identifying themselves as a police officer. Surprised and apprehensive, I responded with a stiff voice, wondering if I had inadvertently committed some transgression. The police officer then brought up a purse-snatching incident, expressing a need to inquire about the matter with my father. The mention of such an incident left me puzzled, and I began to wonder about the unfolding events that seemed to add further layers of complexity to my already tumultuous life. Indeed, the enigmatic cloud of suspicion had descended upon my father, casting a shadow over our tranquil abode. The air thick with uncertainty, I found myself face to face with a stern-faced police officer bearing the weight of an accusation that seemed inconceivable. Inquiring about my father's whereabouts, the officer, with an air of professionalism, sought confirmation of his presence within our home. The exchange took an unexpected turn as the officer, grappling with the perplexity in my tone, requested to lay eyes upon my father. Navigating the corridors of my dwelling, I ushered the law enforcement representative into the sacred space of our familial sanctuary, a room adorned with a Buddhist altar and a photograph capturing the essence of my late father's spirit. In the ensuing revelation, I divulged the heartbreaking truth to the officer that my father had met an untimely demise in a tragic traffic accident. The officer, displaying empathy amid the unfolding tragedy, extended condolences for the loss. Yet my quest for justice and clarity persisted, and I sought to discern the source of this bewildering accusation that had stained my father's reputation. However, the officer, bound by the constraints of confidentiality, refrained from divulging the identity of the accuser. Apologies flowed from the lips of the officer as he departed, leaving me grappling with an unsettling sense of confusion and the nagging question of who had leveled such a grave accusation against my departed father. Days unfolded like the pages of a mystery novel, each chapter bringing a new layer of complexity to the narrative as I took on the responsibilities left in the void by my father's absence. Immersed in the daily operations of my father's factory, I witnessed my mother's valiant attempts to fill the void left by his absence. However, the weight of age limited her contributions. Amidst the mechanical symphony of the factory floor, the harmony was shattered by the sudden intrusion of Richard, a character bearing an air of accusation and vengeance. His booming voice reverberated through the cacophony, demanding restitution for a perceived transgression committed by my father. Caught in the crossfire of accusations, I attempted to reason with Richard, asserting my father's innocence in the face of the alleged purse-snatching incident. The atmosphere within the factory shifted, with the ceaseless hum of machinery giving way to hushed whispers and curious glances exchanged among the employees. Richard, however, remained resolute in his pursuit of justice, convinced of my father's guilt. His insistence echoed through the industrial expanse, causing a disturbance that transcended the confines of the factory. Frustration surged within me as I defended my father's honor, challenging Richard's assertions and questioning the veracity of his claims. As the confrontation unfolded, Richard revealed the purported timeline of the incident, fixing it 2 weeks prior. A murmur rippled through the gathered employees, their confusion palpable. My persistent queries regarding the accuracy of the timeline only fueled Richard's frustration, intensifying his vocal protestations. In the midst of the tumult, Richard's disparaging remarks about my father's workplace and colleagues added fuel to the emotional fire. Yet the gravest affront was his attempt to pin the blame for the alleged purse-snatching squarely on my deceased father's shoulders. My chest tightened with a mix of anger and sorrow as Richard persisted in his accusations, seemingly oblivious to the irrefutable truth, illuminating the fact that my father, the subject of this tumultuous ordeal, had met his end in a tragic traffic accident a month prior. The realization hung heavy in the air, a poignant reminder of the fragility of life and the injustice faced even in death. Richard appeared as though he had ingested an entire pigeonhole, and with an amused expression he muttered, Ha! Undeterred, I pressed on, questioning the incredulous accusation he had just hurled in my father's direction. How could my father snatch purses when he passed away just 1 month ago? Perhaps there wasn't any purse snatching at all, I asserted. However, my skepticism wasn't merely based on the recent events. It was rooted in the knowledge I had gained during our class reunion. It came to light that Richard, since his school days, had been a habitual liar. This revelation occurred during the reunion, where I discovered that his dishonesty had deep roots. Moreover, it turned out that Richard had harbored a long-standing jealousy toward my father, dating back to their school days. This envy sprouted from a romantic rivalry. The girl Richard liked had chosen my father over him. This petty jealousy had fueled an unnecessary rivalry, leaving me unable to forgive Richard for attempting to tarnish my deceased father's reputation with baseless accusations. As Richard persistently asserted his unfounded claims, an interjection from another direction pierced the air. Someone emphatically shouted, "Your president wouldn't do something like that." Our president is a serious person who walks around with honesty, teaching technology, and encouraging independence. He always considers the well-being of the staff and business partners, prioritizing that over profits. The voices praising my father began to multiply, and I felt a mix of emotions, including shame for once thinking my father's work was embarrassing. Amidst the rising tide of support for my father, Richard, trembling and tearful, found himself on the receiving end of an unexpected defense of my father's character by the factory workers. It was a poignant moment that revealed my father's true standing among his peers. In the aftermath, I dealt the decisive blow to Richard by pledging to consult with the police over his false accusations against my father. Overwhelmed and unable to counter the mounting evidence, Richard raised his voice and fled the factory. True to my word, I reported Richard's false accusations to the police, supported by a recording of his statements made by a thoughtful staff member during the heated confrontation. The presence of irrefutable evidence expedited the legal process, leading to Richard's swift apprehension. His attempt to frame my father backfired, transforming his lie into a crime for which he paid a penance in jail. The relief I felt was palpable, knowing that Richard had received the comeuppance he deserved. Days later, Richard's supposed wife sought redemption and arrived at our house with a gift box, apologizing to me and my mother. She confirmed that Richard's actions were a result of the wounds he suffered at the reunion. As it turned out, Richard, once an elite employee, had been fired from his company, struggling to secure new employment. His lies about being an elite crumbled under scrutiny, especially when his inebriated confessions exposed the inconsistencies, ultimately leading to his own embarrassment and downfall. As he grappled with mounting resentment towards my father, an insidious plan began to take root in Richard's mind, a sinister plot to frame him. The sheer audacity of Richard's intention left me utterly disgusted, particularly when I learned of his preposterous rationale for resorting to lies and deceit. Interestingly, it appeared that Richard's wife shared my sentiments. She confided in me, expressing her profound disappointment in Richard's actions and revealing her intention to initiate divorce proceedings. The revelation further underscored the gravity of Richard's transgressions. Adding to the complexity of the situation was the fact that Richard, seemingly devoid of any familial ties, had no children waiting for him upon potential release from jail. This realization cast a somber light on his future prospects. Upon my graduation from college, I found myself at a pivotal juncture. The recent passing of my father weighed heavily on my mind, and I harbored concerns about the state of the company he left behind. Motivated by a dual sense of responsibility and an unshakable desire to honor the legacy of those who had supported my father during Richard's malicious lies, I made the decision to step into the role of leading the company. The decision was multifaceted. Firstly, I felt a genuine concern for the effective management of the company in the wake of my father's demise. Secondly, the impassioned voices of the staff members who had steadfastly defended my father resonated within me. Their loyalty and dedication fueled my determination to become a president who would be both loved and respected by the staff. This incident became a transformative moment for me, Armed with a degree in business administration, I recognized my ability to manage the aspects of the company that my father struggled with. However, I also acknowledged my need to learn from the dedicated staff members who possessed valuable insights into the technological facets of the business. The staff members, driven by a collective sense of loyalty and compassion, willingly imparted their knowledge to me, often emphasizing that their efforts were for the sake of my father. Their anecdotes painted a vivid picture of my father's greatness, and with each story, I grew more appreciative of the man he was. Confronted with the realization of my father's true worth, I found myself expressing remorse for not having recognized his greatness while he was alive. Speaking to his portrait after work, I couldn't help but feel a sense of shame as I looked at my oil-stained self. Yet, I began to view those stains as tangible evidence of my father's tireless work ethic. Determined to honor my father's legacy, I pledged to become a president who mirrored his virtues. I was resolute in my commitment to make his dream of expanding the town factory, a legacy passed down since my grandfather's generation, a reality. Addressing his portrait once again, this time with newfound determination, I spoke of my aspirations and felt an ethereal connection, as if my father were smiling down upon me. From that moment forward, I dedicated myself to working tirelessly, aspiring to become a president worthy of my father's legacy and realizing his dream of expanding the family's factory that had endured through generations. In the midst of the swirling tension, those two simple words, "Get out," pierced through the air, leaving me utterly dumbfounded. The source of this command was none other than my eldest son's wife. The echoes of a similar expulsion I have faced when leaving my parents' home many years ago reverberated in my mind. A sudden surge of anger welled up within me at the thought of being driven out of yet another home. Resolute, I declared, "Well, I'll leave then," my voice trembling with a mix of indignation and sorrow. With determination, I began to gather my belongings, silently vowing that this would be the last straw in a long line of grievances. I swore to myself that I would never forgive my oldest son's wife for this affront. As I packed my things, the realization hit me that it was time to put my plan into action. Jessica, my daughter-in-law, had pushed me to this point, and I couldn't let her behavior go unaddressed. But before delving into the present, allow me to introduce myself. I am Sandra Clark, on the cusp of turning 61 this year. While technically retired, I consider myself fortunate to still be engaged in work, albeit not in the traditional sense. These days, I work mostly from the comfort of my home, occasionally dropping into the office for meetings. The modern work landscape has evolved, and remote work is now the norm. My oldest son, however, seems to have misconceptions about my current life. In his eyes, I'm no longer working and am merely residing in his home. I became a widow in my 40s and, for the most part, have led a financially secure life. The insurance payout from my late husband remains largely untouched, ensuring that my twilight years would be free from financial worries. While it might seem like I'm living a carefree life, I do have my concerns. Chief among them is my oldest son's wife, Jessica. She possesses a strong-willed personality and frequently finds herself at odds with me. This isn't a recent development. It began when she first came to announce their impending marriage. I can't forget the audacious act of showing up in a tracksuit, as if it were the most natural thing in the world. She claimed she wanted me to see her without any pretense, but I couldn't help but see it as a breach of common sense and decorum, to put it mildly. Her behavior often borders on the absurd, and her unwavering confidence and articulate arguments only complicate matters. I'd often wondered why my eldest son had chosen her as his life partner, and I later learned that it was Jessica who had approached him. Despite her eccentricities, there was no denying her beauty, and it seemed that my somewhat sheltered son was completely smitten with her. Even after their marriage, Jessica's behavior remained consistent. She wasn't one to put on airs, but also seemed to lack an understanding of social norms. As much as I wanted to oppose their marriage, I restrained myself, believing it was what my son truly desired. Unfortunately, the consequences of my decision were manifesting before my eyes. Surprisingly, my son was adamant about us all living together in our family home after the wedding. I had initially expected Jessica to oppose this arrangement, but to my surprise, she was in favor of it. It didn't take long for the reasons behind her preference to become clear. After we started living together, Jessica seemed to have completely abdicated her responsibilities when it came to household chores, leaving me to bear the entire burden. From cleaning to laundry and meal preparation, she entrusted all these tasks to me. What baffled me even more was that she was a full-time housewife who had willingly quit her job at the time of our marriage. While I didn't have to commute to work daily, I still had a remote job that demanded a substantial portion of my time, leaving me with even less free time than her. As I diligently faced my computer screen to fulfill my job responsibilities, Jessica would often make belittling comments, insinuating that I was merely playing around. At first, I brushed off her remarks with a laugh, deeming it too troublesome to engage in an argument every time. However, as time passed, it became increasingly irksome to endure her constant undermining. One day, unable to bear the imbalance in our household duties any longer, I decided to approach Jessica with a simple request. Asking if she could lend a hand with the cleaning, considering the ample free time she appeared to have. At that moment, she was idly engrossed in a TV drama, and her reaction was far from positive. With a deeply disgusted expression, she sighed dramatically and retorted, "The reason I don't involve myself in housework is for your sake, dear. Why can't you understand? It's disheartening that you can't appreciate my thoughtfulness." In a rather peculiar turn of logic, she justified her refusal to contribute to household chores by claiming that doing so would deprive me of my sole job. According to her, this would lead to a sedentary lifestyle for me, which she argued was unhealthy. Moreover, she expressed concerns about the potential development of dementia due to a lack of mental stimulation. In other words, Jessica believed that allowing me to handle all the housework was somehow in my best interest. Her reasoning bordered on the absurd, and I couldn't help but shake my head in disbelief. In an attempt to lighten the situation, I reminded her, "We decided to live together so that you can make sure I don't slack off, dear." Her response, delivered with a half smile, left me utterly speechless and confounded. It was in that moment that I began to deeply regret our decision to cohabitate. Every day felt like an ordeal as I found myself laboring over household chores under Jessica's watchful eye. Frustrated and feeling like I was at my breaking point, I decided to confide in my eldest son. My intention was not to complain about Jessica, but to find a solution to my predicament. I explained to him the difficulties of living in our current house, which was old and riddled with level differences. My age and physical condition had taken a toll, resulting in a back injury the previous year. These challenges made daily life increasingly arduous for me. Following our conversation, I made the decision to move into an apartment. It felt like Jessica had driven me to this choice, though I had no regrets about leaving. The new apartment I secured was a rental, and while I initially thought it might be too spacious for me to live alone, I ensured that it had enough room for my grandchildren to stay over in the future. I even had the interior customized to my taste, and at last, my own personal castle was complete. However, my joy was short-lived as Jessica began coming over to the new apartment every day, staying until late into the evening. She lounged on the living room couch, looking around and commenting, "The new apartment is really nice, isn't it, Mother? It might be too big for just you. Why don't you come back to your old home and take care of the house chores? It's for your health and longevity, you know." Jessica's behavior had become unbelievably frustrating. She insisted that I return to our old house to take care of the chores during the day, and her self-centeredness was enough to make anyone dizzy. I had already moved out of that house, and it was time for her to step up as the wife and handle the household responsibilities. After all, I was the one taking care of all the house chores in my new place, and my annual checkups always came back with good results. There was really nothing for Jessica to worry about. However, when I confronted Jessica about this, she simply turned her head away, as if pretending not to hear my words. It was her usual strategy to ignore anything that was inconvenient for her. Yet, even after this confrontation, Jessica continued to visit my apartment regularly. Just the other day, she casually mentioned that going back to the old house was too much of a hassle and ended up staying the night. My parents' home and my apartment were conveniently located just a 15-minute walk apart. And it was my eldest son who had suggested I live near my parents' home. He was concerned about me and thought it would be better for me to be closer to them. While his concern touched me, it also made me a little sad to leave the house where I had spent so many years. One day, when I had been out on a rare business-related outing and returned in the evening, I was in for a surprise. To my disbelief, Jessica had let herself into my apartment using the spare key I had given to my son without telling me. "Oh, welcome back," she said, lying on the floor in front of the TV, not even bothering to get up. I was taken aback and felt uncomfortable knowing that she had been in my apartment while I was away. I told her sternly, "Jessica, that spare key is meant to be used in emergencies, not for you to let yourself in when I'm not home." It was the first time I had firmly asserted myself with her. She seemed surprised because I was usually quick to forget my anger, but this time I held my ground. Her response was less than pleasant. "You really are a stingy mother-in-law," she yelled at me. "I can't stand that about you, and I can't stand anything about you, not even this apartment. We're a family, so you should leave." She tried to usher me out the front door. It became clear that Jessica couldn't stand the thought of me living in this apartment. She was upset that her family was living in the old house while I occupied this place. According to her, it was unfair that the rent for this apartment was being paid by my son James. She believed that it wouldn't be strange for us as his family to live here. In her mind, it was a matter of living within our means. Jessica's perspective helped me understand why she was constantly showing up at my apartment. She believed that this apartment should have been a place for her family to live, and she was not shy about expressing her displeasure. In the end, I decided to agree with her demands. "All right, I will leave," I retorted, staring her down. I promised to move my belongings out within 3 days. Jessica, still skeptical, demanded that I call the moving company right there in front of her. I didn't waste a moment and immediately called a moving service from my smartphone, scheduling them to come in 2 days. As Jessica left satisfied with the resolution, I watched her retreating figure and began formulating a plan for my new life in a senior-specific apartment. It was time for a fresh start and a peaceful living environment. After much contemplation, I made the decision to embark on a 2-week trial of a significant change in my life. It involved the rather unsettling task of handing over both the keys to my cherished apartment and the accompanying lease documents to Jessica, all in the hopes of initiating a contractual alteration through the mediation of our trusty real estate agent, who would ultimately convey our request to the landlord. Fortunately, my history with the landlord spanned many years, and this long-standing relationship proved to be the beacon of flexibility and understanding I had been hoping for during this tumultuous period. Their willingness to accommodate our requested changes in such a congenial manner was, to say the least, an immense relief to me. However, my eldest son, whose emotions were running high and his patience dwindling, was not as pleased with this development. In fact, he was furious with Jessica for what he perceived as her kicking me out of our beloved apartment. The strain in their relationship had reached a point where he was seriously contemplating divorce. Oddly enough, though Jessica appeared unperturbed by his inner turmoil, displaying a surprising level of indifference. On the contrary, she seemed to have embraced the idea of living alone in our apartment and boldly declared her desire for us to live separately. I couldn't help but marvel at her audacity in the face of such a complex and emotional situation. However, what Jessica did not know was that in a mere 5 days, she would come face to face with the truth, and it would change everything. As I continued with my remote work, my phone began to ring incessantly. The caller ID displayed Jessica's name, and I had been eagerly anticipating this moment. I had a recorder ready and waiting to document the impending conversation. Calmly, I pressed the record button and answered the call. "Excuse me, Mother." Jessica's voice rang out. "What's the deal with the rent for this apartment? Why do I have to pay it? This isn't right." Jessica's words triggered a relentless tirade, and it was evident that she was thoroughly flustered. I decided to maintain my composure and respond deliberately. "Oh, but Jessica, aren't you the current leaseholder? It's only right that you should pay. Is there a problem?" My tone was calculated, designed to provoke and annoy Jessica further. To my amusement, the flustered Jessica seemed to become even more agitated. "But didn't James used to pay the rent here? We're not even divorced yet, so shouldn't James pay it?" she retorted. At this point, it was clear that Jessica was desperately trying to shift the financial responsibility onto my eldest son's shoulders. In reality, there was never a time when my son had contributed to the rent. In fact, I had been discreetly providing him with financial support all along. Even after retiring from my job, I continued to work as a consultant for the same company and earned a substantial salary. Additionally, I had taken on advisory roles in the industry, offering my expertise and earning a respectable income based on my well-established reputation. It was safe to say that my earnings far surpassed those of my eldest son. While I had been keeping my financial support a well-guarded secret, it was time for the truth to come to light. "So, Jessica, it's a misunderstanding on your part," I calmly explained. "Originally, I was the one paying the rent for that place. I didn't make James pay a dime." The revelation left Jessica in a state of shock, her grand plans of independent living in our new apartment crumbling before her eyes. She managed to utter a few more words before abruptly ending the call. Immediately, I contacted my eldest son and allowed him to listen to the recorded conversation. His exhaustion from repaying Jessica's mounting debts was palpable, and I understood the burden he was carrying. As a parent, it was only natural for me to extend a helping hand, even if others deemed me too lenient. My son responded softly, "I'll divorce her. I'm tired too." And with that admission, our journey toward addressing this challenging chapter in our lives began in earnest. Guided by a newfound sense of resolve and unity, I sat down with my son, sharing my intricate plan and providing him with a set of detailed instructions. It was crucial that he followed these steps to the letter, and I needed him to understand the gravity of the situation. My first request was for him to take a leave of absence from work, spanning approximately 3 days starting from today. This would be the initial phase of our carefully orchestrated strategy. With a hushed tone and a stern look, I directed him to execute the most crucial aspect of the plan: the discreet removal of his essential belongings from the house. It was imperative that he accomplish this without alerting Jessica, his soon-to-be ex-wife, to our intentions. I emphasized the importance of keeping this operation under the radar, ensuring that no large moving trucks or suspicious activities would draw her attention, potentially causing complications. My instructions also included a specific timeline. I advised my son to gradually move his possessions during the cover of nightfall. The destination for these crucial items was carefully chosen, a single-family home hidden from Jessica's knowledge. I had scoured the area extensively to find this discreet location, which would serve as his final dwelling. Our plan was designed to unfold discreetly, shrouded in secrecy, with each step executed meticulously to minimize any potential hiccups or interruptions. 3 days later, we would put our strategy to the test. Then, as anticipated, the phone rang once more, and the caller ID displayed Jessica's name. This time, her voice was laden with an even greater sense of urgency and agitation. Curiously, I greeted her, maintaining an intentionally relaxed and composed tone. But it was clear that Jessica was on the verge of panic. Her distress was palpable, and her words tumbled out in a rush. "Mother, our house is up for sale, and I received a call from my parents. They informed me that my belongings have arrived at their house. What does this mean?" It became apparent that my eldest son had followed through with my instructions precisely. He had relocated Jessica's possessions to her parents' house and listed the house they once shared for sale, leaving it empty. The landlord had promptly issued an ultimatum, stating that if the rent remained unpaid, Jessica would need to vacate the premises. The situation had escalated quickly, and Jessica was now in a state of near hysteria. With a sense of finality in my voice, I responded, "Jessica, there are a few things I want to correct." The time had come to address all the pent-up frustration and grievances that had accumulated over time. "Firstly, I am no longer your mother-in-law," I asserted firmly. "Yesterday, James filed for divorce. As you signed the papers, didn't you?" The divorce had been a long time coming, primarily because of Jessica's habit of using divorce as a weapon to manipulate my eldest son. I explained that my son had signed the divorce papers and officially submitted them to the city office. It was a bold step given his deep love for Jessica when they initially married. However, he had come to realize that her constant threat of divorce was an unhealthy pattern, one that had left him with no alternative. "The divorce papers have been formally accepted," I added, emphasizing the irrevocable nature of the situation. "You always said to James that you could divorce any time. Aren't you satisfied now that things have gone your way?" My voice was calm, but the tension hung in the air. On the other end of the line, Jessica seemed to be holding her breath, searching for words to respond. Frustration must have been coursing through her veins as she was unable to articulate a retort. Moreover, I couldn't help but express genuine concern for her post-divorce prospects. I pointed out the practical challenges she would face, including her financial situation and the costs associated with relocation. "How did you even manage to pay this amount?" I inquired, genuinely surprised. Jessica's frustration was no longer concealed. It erupted into a tirade of anger and curses directed at me. In that moment, it was clear that our carefully orchestrated plan had unfolded precisely as intended, though the repercussions were unfolding in ways that no one could have predicted. She spoke of her union with my son in a manner that was nothing short of confounding. According to her, the marriage was a consequence of her late husband's inheritance, which she asserted was now under her stewardship. In a tone that pierced the air, she vehemently declared her inability to so much as budge a single penny from this newfound wealth. It was as if she had been bound by some invisible financial straitjacket. The anguished cry that followed was a stark contrast to her earlier tone. Her grievances flowed freely as she lamented the unfortunate turn of events. It was evident that her matrimonial ties had been forged under the weight of insurmountable debts. I chose not to intervene, allowing my son to eavesdrop on this exchange, understanding that it might serve as valuable evidence in case of a future divorce. As Jessica's tirade continued, I patiently waited for it to run its course, a task that demanded significant endurance. For approximately a quarter of an hour, she ranted unabated, her words like a storm of frustration and discontent. Then something shifted. The tone of her voice softened, and the anger that had once consumed her gave way to desperate pleas. She confided in me, revealing her disconnection from her own family, who had disowned her due to her profligate spending and borrowing habits. Tearfully, she begged for assistance, her voice quivering with vulnerability. As I listened, I couldn't help but feel a pang of sympathy for her, though I remained steadfast in my resolve to view her predicament as a consequence of her actions. Apologies and regrets, it seemed, held little sway over our relationship now. We were, after all, strangers, and there was little more to be said. With a curt farewell, I ended the conversation, finally exhaling a sigh of relief. However, the drama did not end there. My eldest son later informed me that Jessica had caused a scene at his workplace, leading to the involvement of law enforcement. Upon returning home, he discovered that she had been forcibly locked out of their shared apartment, with the landlord having changed the locks during her absence. It appeared that she had been attempting to reach us, but we had preemptively disconnected our phones and changed our numbers. Jessica's desperation must have been palpable when she found herself unable to communicate with us. She was left with no choice but to turn to her estranged family for help. However, her return home was met with a cold reception, as her family had left her belongings, which I had sent to them, exposed to the elements in the backyard. Adding insult to injury, the unpaid rent for her apartment had been billed to her parents, further stoking their anger. Rumors began to circulate that Jessica had found refuge in an apartment provided by an organization that supported the homeless. The stark change in her circumstances became evident when I crossed paths with her on the street. Her once vibrant hair had turned a ghostly white, and her skin had lost its luster, a testament to the stress she had endured. Observing her transformation underscored how profoundly living conditions could impact a person's well-being. It was a stark reminder of the consequences of one's choices. As for me, I had settled into a new life in a house purchased with my late husband's inheritance. It was a duplex, ensuring that my son could remarry should he choose to do so. We shared meals, but otherwise, he managed his affairs independently. The money for the sale of my parents' home was carefully preserved for future needs, earmarked for my son and his prospective wife, and of course, any future grandchildren. In the tranquility of my new abode, I nurtured an English garden, a long-held dream. On days when work did not demand my attention, I would tend to the yew trees and herbs, finding solace and purpose in their growth. This new life, brimming with hope, had become my daily routine, a testament to the resilience of the human spirit and the possibility of renewal. As they were about to stay with us, I hadn't made a reservation. My mind was blank with hostility on this family vacation that I didn't even want to go on, ending up at a fancy hotel. My husband, Spencer, pretends not to be aware of her animosity toward me and walks away, leaving me behind with a casual, "We'll see you at checkout, Emily." They disappear into the luxurious hotel. My name is Emily, and I finally turned 30 this year. I'm a stay-at-home mom living with Spencer, my mother-in-law Kate, and my son Sean, who turned 3 this year. Spencer and I met on a blind date 7 years ago and ended up marrying. We've been living an ordinary life without any major quarrels, known to be a couple very much in love among the neighbors. 2 years after we got married, we had our son. Spencer was busy with work, but actively helped me with childcare. I had no complaints about him, and we were living in a normal family environment. However, after the birth of Sean, things started to deteriorate. 6 months ago, my father-in-law passed away, and Kate moved in with us. The last time I saw her, other than at the wedding, was when Spencer and I visited her to announce our engagement. So it had been a long time, and my first impression of her was not a very good one. My father-in-law, on the other hand, treated me kindly, and I had a good impression of him. "Spencer, are you sure she is the right woman for you? I'm worried she's going to give you a hard time." I remembered her blatantly speaking her mind. Spencer tried hard to make her accept the marriage, but the way she looked at me was not very nice. We managed to get her approval after some persuasion from her husband and Spencer. I still think she shouldn't have openly made such remarks in front of me. I was worried if we could get along once she moved in with us. I tried to be positive and switched my mind to do my best with her when she and her belongings arrived at the house. I helped her unpack, and she was very kind to Sean, who turned 3 years old while she took care of him. Spencer and I unpacked, and I asked him to take care of the heavy stuff while I organized the small things. The unpacking went smoothly, and there was only the small stuff left for me to do. "This is supposed to go over here. I wonder what kind of education you went through." She commented about a fake plant that could be put anywhere. I put it there to improve the atmosphere of the room, but Kate pointed it out to me. Although displeased, I tried to think she was just particular and moved it to the spot she wanted. She looked after Sean for a little while and started watching TV without offering to help me. I didn't even have time to pay attention to him, but she scolded me to watch him. I had my hands full with him and unpacking. But I couldn't ask Spencer, who was taking a rest after carrying heavy things, to help me out. I finished tidying up with mixed feelings, trying to think that she was feeling unsettled about changing her living environment, pushing away my frustration for her. After that, her criticism continued every day, and one morning, I woke up early to prepare breakfast for everyone and tried to take a rest. The house was messy, and if I had time to rest, she insisted I should clean it up. She never gave me a moment of rest throughout the day, constantly criticizing how I did things. She was hardly ever at home during the daytime, let alone doing anything herself. I was getting mentally strained by such a life, and I decided to talk to Spencer about her. She must be having a hard time since Dad's gone. Take it easy on her, I pleaded. However, he wasn't any help. Even though he knew how she treated me, he didn't intervene. Every night, regardless of my feelings, I found myself lying in bed, hands on my forehead, drifting off to sleep in despair. My 3-year-old son cried at night, unable to bear the fatigue and sleepiness. I couldn't bring myself up, and Spencer rushed to his side. Kate must have woken up by the noise and shook me violently. How are you still sleeping when your son is crying? How can you live with yourself, Spencer? It's a woman's job. She yelled at me for being exhausted and unable to move. I didn't want to make things worse, so I quietly got up and went to scene. I ended up getting no sleep that night. Spencer was off that day, and I was thinking about what to cook for lunch. Kate started preparing, and when she put the meals on the table, one plate was missing. It looks like one portion is missing. I married Spencer, who works hard, and my grandson, of course. There's none for you. Make your own. I was absolutely mortified. I had been wondering if she was bullying me, but it became clear at that point. I had been unaware of it for a long time. I couldn't stand her without thinking that she was just being hard on me to make me a better wife. If I didn't think that way, I would have broken down. I couldn't talk back to her, so I confided in my friend after I dropped off scene at daycare. That's definitely bullying. How are you holding up? I told the details to my best friend from childhood. She listened attentively and showed great concern, and I finally broke down in tears in front of her. I had been fighting against my frustrations and suppressing them at home for so long. She encouraged me, saying that I was doing my best and that I would be okay. I will help you. I will figure something out, she assured me. We parted as we both had things to do at home. Even though we didn't talk for very long, I felt lighter. My friend suggested a couple of things. One was to put a bug in the house and record what was said on a daily basis. I bought a cheap recorder on the way to pick up scene and set it up discreetly at home. In the middle of cleaning, I picked up a piece of paper that had fallen out of a drawer in Kate's room. When I opened it, I saw a personal loan agreement, and the amount was $20,000. I couldn't believe my eyes, but I thought this might be useful and put the paper in my pocket. After a while, Kate returned and Spencer came home just in time for dinner. We sat around the dinner table with the usual complaints from Kate. Oh, by the way, my friend gave me a discount coupon for a one-night stay at the 5-star spa hotel. The fact that she brought up the subject suggested that she wanted to go. Spencer was very much in favor of it, and my son was also excited. I didn't feel particularly enthusiastic, assuming the trip would be a horrible experience for me. However, Kate surprised me with an unexpected invitation. Well, since you're here and always working so hard, you can come along too. I couldn't believe my ears, considering how much she had harassed me. Maybe she meant well, I thought, reluctant to believe she offered with malice. She expressed her desire to book everything the next day. Unable to sleep that night, I sat on the sofa for a long time contemplating the trip. Scene wanted to go too, but it was challenging to take him alone, and my mom couldn't watch him. Reluctantly, I considered Spencer's plea for me to join, even though he turned a blind eye to my suffering caused by his own mother. I don't want to go, Spencer. You don't help me when I'm being mistreated by your mother, I asserted. He couldn't say anything to that, but he pleaded with me to join. So I gave him a condition. Have a look at this. I found it when I was cleaning Kate's room. I showed him the IOU with the $20,000 debt. His face showed disbelief. He couldn't believe his mother had such a debt. Can we help her pay this off as her son? He asked, knowing I'd managed our finances. I declined, having no good intentions to help someone who mistreated me. While I understood his feelings as a son, I couldn't accept his plea. I beg you. I want you to help me with this and the trip only if you accept my conditions, I proposed. The first condition was that he must intervene when Kate mistreated me. The second was to make rules for her, write them down, and post them all over the house. If she couldn't agree, we would kick her out. Spencer agreed, and I asked my friend to post the rules while we were away. We decided to act as usual until after the trip. Spencer and I would drop the bomb then. On the day of the trip, Spencer took everyone's bags, and we were about to leave the house. Kate's bullying started immediately. You don't need to carry the bags. Let Emily do it. Spencer glanced at me apologetically, and I obeyed, not wanting to cause animosity before what was to come later. The bags were heavy, making it difficult for me to carry them while also taking care of Scene. I suppose I wouldn't have any energy left to enjoy the hotel. We took a bus a little further away and then drove over a mountain road to the hotel. The exterior and interior were beautiful and luxurious. Scene was excited, exploring every corner, and Kate went to check us in at the front desk. Afterward, as I grabbed my bag to go to the room, Kate's words blew me out of the hotel. Were you planning to stay with us? I only made a reservation for the three of us. I had no idea what she was talking about, and at that moment, it became clear she never intended to let me stay with them from the beginning. Gradually understanding the situation, I was shocked. I inquired, "Where should I sleep then?" To which she indifferently replied, "I don't know. Annabelle care. Why don't you just camp out in the wild around there?" She nonchalantly asked me to join, casually suggesting I sleep out in the woods. Something was seriously wrong with her, and I couldn't help but feel enraged. I was on the verge of yelling at her, but she and my family vanished into the hallway with a casual, "I will see you at checkout time, okay?" Stunned, I stood in the lobby for a while before deciding to leave the hotel. I knew there was a catch, but I didn't expect to be forced to camp out. I was on the verge of tears. All I received from Spencer was a message saying, "I'm sorry," and I couldn't even bring myself to reply. It was past noon when we arrived, so I had lunch at a random cafe and found an open field with a good night view. As soon as I arrived at the field, my friend called, asking how the trip was going. I explained what had just happened, and she was furious. She offered to pick me up, but I declined. I was thankful, but I was sure Kate would get what she wanted if I left. I couldn't foresee what she might do to me later. After hanging up, I decided to consult a lawyer just in case. I sent him my evidence, intending to sue her for emotional abuse if she were to be kicked out after the trip. The lawyer assured me that I could file a claim if it was determined that there was no premeditation. I had concrete evidence that should have proven it. After the call, mental and physical exhaustion hit me hard, and I lay down on the fresh grass, ending the day in an open field with a beautiful night view and a gentle breeze. The next morning, I met up with Kate and my family just in time for checkout. Kate immediately criticized, "Emily, did you stay in the woods? I bet you didn't even clean yourself. You're so filthy." Spencer tried to intervene, but she quickly changed the subject. It seemed he must have told her that forcing me out was too much. She bragged happily about how nice the hotel was, and Scene's smile was my only consolation on the way back home. Upon our return, Kate immediately shouted, "What is all this? Don't play with me." There were rules posted all over the house. She must have read some of them because her face turned red, and she became furious. Then Spencer showed her the IOU, and her red face immediately turned pale. Initially attempting to deny it, she eventually confessed to a spree with her late husband's life insurance. When the money ran out, she couldn't stop the habit and borrowed from Spencer. We proceeded as discussed, and Spencer firmly stated, "I can't have someone who has a debt living with us. I would ask you to leave. Of course, I have proof of what you have done to me. I will sue you," I declared, playing the recording for her to listen. As she heard the playback, her face turned as white as a ghost, and she begged me to let her stay. I informed her that she could stay if she agreed to abide by the rules and refrain from aggressive behavior. She eagerly agreed and apologized, saying, "I'm very sorry. Please help me. I beg you." Witnessing her in this state was unexpected, and I felt a sense of satisfaction, thinking it was finally over. My knees buckled, and I fell to the floor. Spencer sat me down in a chair and started yelling at her about the debt. His respect and trust for her had undoubtedly crashed down, and she must have never imagined a day when her son would scold her furiously, to which she frantically apologized. After settling everything, she kept silent and stared at the sky for the rest of the day. The atmosphere in the household changed drastically the next day. When I woke up early to prepare breakfast as usual, Kate immediately made a nasty remark. What differed from usual was the change in Spencer's attitude. He spoke out in a firm tone, saying, "Mom, we just talked about this yesterday." She choked on her words and went to sit on the sofa. Though tempted to laugh at the scene, I held it in and continued preparing breakfast. Spencer felt guilty about not being a protector and couldn't stand strong against Kate, who raised him. I knew in my heart that he was a kind man, and there must have been something on his mind to turn a blind eye. I didn't blame him. Though I needed him on my side, I couldn't hate the man I fell in love with. He apologized to me in tears, and afterward, he started to watch over me, while Kate's attitude improved day by day. She still pointed out some minor things, but I didn't feel any malice from her. I hoped she would continue like this, allowing me to live with ease and maintain a healthy mind. The debt payment was $700 a month, and Spencer and I cooperated to pay it back, as Kate was too old to work. I secured a part-time job, balancing work and home responsibilities. Kate took care of taking my son to and from daycare, doing a commendable job. Despite her bad habit, Spencer managed her finances. Our family changed gradually for the better. Though dealing with a terrible mother-in-law might make some consider divorce, I couldn't bring myself to do that. Fortunately, I found a solution that helped rebuild my family. I felt lucky and grateful for my friend who listened and encouraged me during tough times. Without her, I would have had no one to vent to, possibly leading to a mental breakdown. When remembering the pain I went through, I get teary-eyed but pat my own shoulder, acknowledging that I tried my best to hold my family together, even in moments of depression and lacking motivation to cook and clean. I completed my tasks to ensure everyone could have a decent life, especially my son, and the sense of accomplishment fills my heart. While I may never fully forgive Kate, she will always be my mother-in-law, and I choose to treat her kindly. Several years have passed since then, and my son has grown up, starting preschool. We are almost finished paying off our debts and are considering moving to a new house. Kate has started to help me a little, and my relationship with Spencer has become better than before. We are even thinking of having another child. My family is now stable, and I am content. I will continue to do my best for my family. I'm Christine, a 41-year-old homemaker. My husband, Mark, and I first crossed paths at work, eventually tying the knot after 5 years. Our joy was complete with the arrival of our son, Jake, now an adorable 5-year-old. While I'd love to spend every moment with him, our financial constraints necessitate my working and leaving Jake at a daycare center. Jake, being understanding, often makes simple requests, like wanting an omelet tomorrow. His innocence makes it easy to comply, although I secretly suspect it's because my culinary skills don't extend far beyond basic dishes. Despite my excuses, I can't deny the challenge of crafting a perfect omelet. The early years with Jake were blissful, with our family outings and weekend drives creating cherished memories. However, things started changing when Jake turned 3. Mark, once elated by Jake's presence, began coming home late, citing frustration with Jake's occasional fussiness as the reason. Mark's late arrivals became more frequent, often extending into the early morning hours. His excuses seemed flimsy, and the scent of sweet perfume on his suit raised suspicions. Though bothered, I chose to ignore it, prioritizing Mark's role as a decent father when Jake was at his best. Fast forward 2 years, and Jake has grown into a lively 5-year-old. His vitality contrasts sharply with Mark's deteriorating attitude. Mark's impatience surfaces even for trivial matters, like a spilled cup of tea. Attempts to address Jake's behavior result in Mark snapping and refusing to engage with him. Conversations with Mark have become strained. His dismissive attitude toward family time and insistence on eating out instead of my cooking add to the tension. Suggestions for outings on his days off are met with resistance as Mark prioritizes rest over quality time together. It's disheartening to witness Mark's persistent irritability, seemingly stuck in a perpetual fussy face. Despite my attempts to bridge the communication gap, our exchanges have devolved into arguments, leaving me to wonder if Mark will ever outgrow this phase at 40 years old. I once confronted him about his perpetual anger, asking why he was always so furious. As expected, he responded with his usual ire, claiming, "It's because you're useless, obviously. You're passing that on to Jake. I wish he turned out more like me." It was a hurtful statement, insinuating that all of Jake's positive traits were inherited from him, while any negative qualities came from me. I found it hard to believe his audacity. My frustration with Mark escalated, with his words and actions causing me considerable emotional pain. Thoughts of divorce crossed my mind, as he seemed one step away from ending our marriage due to his behavior and lack of respect for our family. Despite it all, I stayed, holding on to the love I still had for my husband. Even though Jake was scared of Mark, he clung to a semblance of affection for his father. Living with a husband who was perpetually in a bad mood wore me down, but I lacked the courage to break up our family. Then, one day, Mark brought up the topic of a trip with some colleagues from work. These colleagues were the ones he was close to, the ones reveling in their single lives. He casually informed me of his decision to join them on the trip. I questioned the rationale behind his sudden desire for a getaway. Mark expressed his frustration, claiming he had been patient for too long, sacrificing all his time for the family. According to him, I spent all the money he earned on useless luxuries. I retorted that I was not indulging in luxuries and, in fact, contributed more to our family than he did. The harder I worked, the more money I made, but Mark seemed to put less and less into our family. His trip, financed by our shared resources, infuriated me. He declared, "I'm going away for a week from tomorrow, whether you like it or not. Don't complain." I was taken aback by the abruptness of his decision and felt my anger simmering. Before I could respond, Jake, who was supposed to be asleep, woke up. Panicked, I rushed to attend to him, apologizing for the disturbance. As I tried to put Jake back to sleep, I sensed something was wrong. His body felt hot, and he complained of a headache. In an instant, his eyes rolled up, and he collapsed. Frantically, I called for an ambulance. Mark, who I assumed would accompany us, refused to come along. Despite my frustration, I had no choice but to board the ambulance alone. Thankfully, the test results indicated a non-serious illness, but Jake was admitted for further tests. I called Mark to provide updates, balancing the urgency of the situation with the need to keep him informed. "What do you want?" I could sense his extreme annoyance, but with no time to worry about it, I quickly explained the situation and urgently asked him to bring a change of clothes for Jake's hospital stay. "Are you joking?" was his incredulous response. "I can't make it. I don't want to be late for tomorrow's trip, so I'm staying at my colleague's tonight." "Are you serious? Your son is in the hospital, and you're still going on a trip," I exclaimed, hoping for some understanding. "Of course I am. She doesn't need me there for a simple checkup. Jake is suffering from a high fever, so there's nothing I can do," he callously replied. "Yes, there is. I asked you to." Before I could finish, he abruptly hung up. I tried calling again, but it went straight to voicemail. Frustration and anger surged through me. I didn't have his colleague's phone number to reach out for assistance. In the end, I called my parents and sought their help, feeling betrayed by Mark's callous abandonment of his son in the hospital. 2 strikes against him, and I could sense the 3rd strike looming. 3 days later, Jake's tests were over, and he was back to his usual energetic self. The results showed no problems, and he would be discharged from the hospital the next day. Planning to buy some pudding for him, I picked up my phone to check messages, and that's when it happened. It vibrated with an incoming call from a former colleague, Cindy. "Christine, where are you?" Cindy's voice sounded panicked. "I'm at the hospital." "Never mind that. It's an emergency," I replied, thinking it was related to Jake. "Apparently, your husband died in an accident." I couldn't comprehend her words. "What? This is a joke, right?" But her voice on the other end persisted. In a panic, I ran out. The shocking fact that my husband had passed away was hard to grasp. My colleague continued with more unsettling details. Mark was on a trip alone with a woman, and she had driven into oncoming traffic, colliding with a tree. There had to be a misunderstanding. Mark was supposed to be with his male colleagues. The thought that he could have been killed in a car accident with a woman seemed impossible. In a frenzy, I called my parents and urgently asked them to look after Jake, feeling overwhelmed by the sudden turn of events. In a state of panic, I rushed to the hospital where my husband was admitted. Amid my frantic thoughts, I couldn't help but wonder why they had called the company before reaching out to me. Nevertheless, it seemed like the situation was not a fabrication, so I hastened to verify the details. According to my former colleague, the men who were supposed to be with my husband were safe. Unsurprisingly, they were not together. Mark hadn't even bothered briefing them about his fabricated alibi. He was with another woman. 3 strikes. 3 strikes. And it seemed Mark's actions had caught up with him. Doubts lingered about whether he had actually died, and I needed to confirm the truth. As I entered the hospital room, a rattle echoed. To my surprise, there was only one person in the room, undoubtedly Mark. Bandages wrapped around his hands and feet looked painful, but the rise and fall of his chest indicated he was breathing. Cindy's information about his demise was incorrect. Mark was alive. "You're alive," I murmured, moving closer. Examining his slightly open eyes, he seemed a bit shaken. Maybe he hadn't anticipated the company contacting me so promptly. In his usual grumpy tone, Mark spat out, "Took you long enough. Your husband's been in an accident, and it takes you ages to get here. You useless piece off." "Well, good to see he's still his usual self," I interjected, noting his battered appearance. It appeared he had only broken his left hand and right leg, despite the wrecked rental car. "I'm glad you're okay," I told him, to which he replied, "You better take good care of me, huh?" He seemed remarkably fine. As I handed him a sheet of paper, I explained, "When I say I'm glad you're okay, I'm talking about your right hand. If you had broken your right hand, you wouldn't be able to hold a pen to sign this." Perplexed, Mark unfolded the paper, and I revealed divorce papers. "Yes, I was preparing it, which is why I got here late. I know you're injured, so I'll just leave it here. Make sure you sign it." "Are you joking? Why would I sign this?" Mark protested. "Wow, you told your girlfriend you were getting a divorce, didn't you? The reason you came home late every night was because you were with her. Was this trip a prenuptial trip too? Good for you. Now you can marry your sweet Michelle." "How do you even know her name?" Mark questioned. "Because I spoke to her, obviously. In fact, before coming to your hospital room, I stopped by the woman's room. She was also in the same hospital. I asked for the woman who was in a car accident and immediately found her. Despite her injuries, she seemed better off than you. Her parents were in the hospital room too. I asked her to tell me everything," I explained, recounting my encounter with the woman. With her parents questioning her, she glared at me and said, "Let him go. I don't know what she sees in you. You're cold to your wife and kids. You don't pay your bills. You go out every night. And you don't care when your kid is in the hospital. The cheating. It's game over." Mark's face instantly turned pale at her damning words. I anticipated his defensive reaction, but it didn't alter my decision. No, she's just for fun, you know. You're the only one I love. Just stop here," Mark pleaded as I filled out the divorce form. Unperturbed, I suggested, "Even if you tear it up, I've got plenty of space. In fact, why don't I just call a lawyer for alimony and child support? It might be better." A sudden change came over Mark as he shriveled up and stuttered, "I don't want a divorce." "Why not?" I took a deep breath, preparing to say what needed to be said. "Because," I began, "you can spend your money as you like, play around with young women, have children to take care of you, and enjoy life while I do all the dirty housework. A wife at home for security and a girlfriend for fun. What a great life. But if you divorce me, that all disappears." Mark's mouth hung open, and he seemed to lose his voice. I continued, "Wasn't it your perfect life plan? Now it's ruined. You can make a new life plan with Michelle, or whoever you like, but my son and I will not be part of it. Just pretend you died and have a new life." After saying everything I wanted to, I turned to leave the hospital room. Mark pleaded, "Wait, wait," in a pathetic voice, but I kept walking. In the coming days, I initiated divorce proceedings and hired a lawyer. The discussions included Michelle, who was discharged from the hospital. When Mark claimed he had no intention of divorcing me, Michelle became furious, resulting in a heated argument. Mark resisted signing the papers, claiming I had ruined his life. Despite their conflicts, the divorce became official, and I received almost all the alimony payment I sought. After the discussions, my lawyer and I left the room, leaving Mark and Michelle still arguing. I wondered about the fate of their relationship, but my apathy prevailed. I told them, "I hope you have a lovely life together," before leaving the room, possibly being petty. Despite everything, Jake and I had returned to a peaceful life, free from Mark's mood swings. Regret lingered about not divorcing earlier, realizing Mark's attitude had caused my son pain. Living with just the two of us, I understood that we were perfectly fine without Mark. In fact, every day became a joy. Despite this, I acknowledged Mark as Jake's father, allowing him access if he wanted to see him. Surprisingly, Jake showed no interest. After the divorce, I sent Mark an email confirming alimony and child support payments. His reply was laughable. He recounted his misfortune, stressed from gossip at work, mistakes leading to job loss, and his parents cutting him off. I replied, suggesting he seek help from Michelle. Mark claimed they broke up, and he continued to send desperate messages. I eventually blocked him. As I placed my phone on the table, sipping tea, Jake approached, asking, "What should we do on our day off tomorrow, Mommy?" After a moment's thought, I suggested, "How about we grab some lunch and go to the aquarium?" Jake's face lit up with joy, expressing excitement about the dolphin show. Witnessing his enthusiasm, I couldn't help but smile, feeling content with our peaceful and happy life. I am Chelsea. A few weeks ago, my father, who had been battling illness, passed away. Regret lingers within me as I wish I could have shared with him the joy of meeting his grandchildren. These thoughts escaped my lips, accompanied by a heavy sigh. I got married 5 years ago at the age of 25, and during the ceremony, my father and I made a pact. I promised to inform him first when I got pregnant. Sadly, that promise remained unfulfilled. My only regret about my father centers around this unkept promise. His illness had been discovered a year ago, and since then, I devoted myself to doing everything I could for him. Regular visits to my parents' home and the hospital with my mother became a routine. I increased the frequency of phone calls and video chats, exhaustively exploring every avenue to support him. Despite my efforts, a lingering doubt persists. Could I have done more? As I mull over these thoughts, my mother, sitting beside me, reassures me, "You did well, Chelsea. Your father would be satisfied." Just then, my sister Portia returns, accompanied by the family lawyer. The mid-40s man hands me his business card, introducing himself as Samuel, the attorney. My mother guides Samuel to a seat, and as soon as he settles in, my sister blurts out, "I heard from this lawyer that Dad left quite an inheritance." I quickly clarify, "It's not all for you, Portia." Her expression sours, and we exchange glares. Our strained relationship, exacerbated by my sister's distant attitude since our father's illness was discovered, hangs heavily in the room. I try to address the tension, stating, I may have said it wrong, worried about him, but you don't have to be so stubborn. She retorts, I'm not being stubborn. I live in the city. It's not easy to come to the countryside. Our argument reveals deeper issues, and the lawyer intervenes, urging us to calm down. Apologies are exchanged, but the lawyer redirects the focus, stating, as I mentioned on the phone, I have your father's will. My mother inquires when this occurred, and Samuel responds, a few weeks before he passed away, he contacted me. The lawyer had visited the hospital, where my father, with his primary physician present, had finalized his will. It had been arranged for the physician to inform the lawyer upon my father's passing. Now, with a white envelope in hand, the lawyer places the will in front of us, confirming, this is the will, undoubtedly in your father's handwriting. I murmured as I verified the characters on the envelope. My sister Portia appeared somewhat irritable, but she dismissed it, saying, never mind, just tell us what's in it. I'm busy. You know that very well, she added, addressing the lawyer with a wry smile. With that, he opened the envelope, revealing a single sheet of paper. The contents outlined that, aside from the house and land, my father's inheritance included some savings and a storage shed. While we were aware of the house and land, the mention of a storage shed puzzled me. As I contemplated this, my sister, visibly annoyed, interjected, wait a minute. You didn't mention the farm. The lawyer acknowledged the oversight and explained, yes, the farm your dad used to work on as a hobby. He recounted how, after turning 50, my father decided to close his company in the next town and focus on farming near our home. Despite initial objections from my sister, who opposed the decision during her college years, my father persisted, finding joy in the physical activity of farming. Now, my sister insisted that the farm should be part of the inheritance. The lawyer, reviewing the documents, quickly addressed this concern, revealing that the farm was rented land. My sister expressed disappointment, realizing we didn't own the expansive piece of land as she had thought. The conversation then turned to dividing the inheritance. The lawyer suggested giving the house and land to the wife, my mother, leaving the rest to be divided between my sister and me. The savings and storage shed were up for distribution. My sister eagerly claimed the savings, valuing at about $100,000, declaring triumphantly, I'll take the cash. However, I objected, emphasizing my position as the oldest daughter. I proposed that she could have the storage shed, questioning its significance. Despite my objections, my sister was adamant about her claim to the cash. The lawyer clarified that the storage shed was a small building next to the phone, approximately 65 square feet, resembling the size of a small bedroom. He presented photos of the shed, revealing its dilapidated exterior and basic contents, consisting mainly of ordinary tools like hoses, scissors, and shovels. The realization dawned that the shed held little monetary value. I don't want it, my sister grimaced. I painted the photos too. It was all very ordinary. These are sentimental items, but they won't bring in money. As I pondered this, my sister reluctantly agreed, saying, fine, I'll take the cash. You can have that dirty shed. However, I found it unfair. Hold on, that's not fair. You agreed to the vegetable farming. What are you complaining about now? My sister countered, making it difficult to argue. Still, I couldn't let her take all of Dad's inheritance without a fight. My sister pressed me, asking if we were good. My mother chimed in, saying, as long as Portia won't complain later, I have no objections. Reluctantly, I nodded, and the division was settled. My sister grinned, and feeling uneasy. I immediately objected, saying, well, I'm not satisfied. Give it up. You're so greedy, my sister retorted. Her words left me speechless, and I couldn't deny that family was more important than money. My sister abruptly ended the conversation, and in the end, my mother got the house and land. My sister got Dad's savings, and all that was left for me was the dirty shed. My sister, laughing loudly, signed a document promising not to complain about the inheritance division. Filled with complaints, I couldn't help but vent to my mother. "Mom, why didn't you help me?" My mother replied, "I did help you. I made sure you got the shed." Unhappy about inheriting the shed, I puffed out my cheeks in response. The next day, armed with the shed key from the lawyer, I headed to the shed near the field, a 10-minute walk from home along a deserted rural road. Finally, reaching the empty field, I opened the dusty shed and began looking around for something sentimental from Dad. Yet, all I found were tools and nothing special. Disheartened, I considered taking what was inside when I noticed something odd. The shed seemed smaller on the inside. Puzzled, I walked around to the back and gasped. There was another door. This second entrance wasn't visible from the inside, creating a mysterious space accessible only from the back. Excitement surged through me as I thought, this must be Dad's surprise. Dad loved surprises. Even on birthdays, memories flooded back and tearing up. I returned inside, searching for the back door key. After finding 2 hidden keys in the handle of a shovel, I tried one in the door at the back. With a click, it opened, revealing a cramped space with a large safe. I wondered, is this from Dad's company? I recognized the safe. It was the same one I saw in the corner of his office when I was a child. Nostalgic, I hugged the safe. This was a true memory of my father, and I felt fulfilled. This alone made the inheritance worthwhile. However, knowing Dad, this couldn't be the end. There had to be more surprises. There's got to be more surprises, I muttered as I inserted the second key into the safe. With a slightly rusty sound, the safe opened. What? No way. The moment I saw the contents, I was stunned. Inside was an unexpected inheritance. Overwhelmed, I locked the safe and rushed to my mother. After explaining the situation to her, I called my husband, and with his help, we moved the safe from my parents' house. Then it hit me, the contents of the safe were undoubtedly Dad's. However, if it's part of my inheritance, including the shed, I might have to pay inheritance tax. Better get this checked out thoroughly, I thought. The valuable contents of the safe prompted me to consult the lawyer. According to him, for inheritance tax matters, it's better to consult a certified public accountant. So I got a referral to an accountant from a friend and left all the complicated matters to them. The year passed in this way, and just when I thought things had finally settled down, my sister showed up near my home. "What brings you here all of a sudden?" I asked. "Well, I had some business at our parents' house, so I stopped by, yeah, something like that," my sister replied, her behavior appearing strange. No matter how you looked at it, even if my home was close to our parents', it was still a 20-minute drive. We weren't the kind of sisters who would casually visit, especially after the tension of our dad's inheritance. I couldn't shake off my suspicion as I looked at her. My sister, acting a bit nervous, asked, "Can I come in?" "Sure, but what's the matter?" I inquired. "I have something to talk about," my sister said, forcing a smile. Reluctantly, I let her into the house. After serving some coffee, she started to fidget, and then began to speak. "So, did you win the lottery or something?" she asked. "What? No, I didn't," I replied. "Then did your husband get a bonus?" she questioned, puzzled. "I never buy lottery tickets because I'm not interested. My husband, who's a salaried worker, does get a holiday bonus, but it's not that time of year," I explained. Confused, I asked her directly, "Hey, what are you talking about?" Suddenly, my sister got angry. "What are you making fun of me?" "No. What are you talking about?" she snapped. "Money. Money, you have it, don't you? Money." My sister spoke excitedly. It was a story from a few days ago. Living in the city, my sister had run into our aunt by chance, and the woman started the conversation like this. "I know how hard it's been for you since you lost your father. Are you doing okay?" "Yes, well, I visited him many times when he was sick. Thank you. But you must be relieved, right? Getting such a big thank you gift." "Thank you gift?" "Yes, your sister sent me a $500 gift card as a thank you for visiting him." What caught my sister's attention was the gift card. Hearing that I had sent it, she was convinced I had come into some extra money. "You got a windfall, didn't you?" Just admit it. My sister interrogated me. Ah, that's what this is about, I sighed. My sister didn't like my attitude and yelled, "What's with that attitude? Are you mocking me?" No, it was a thank you gift. So, where'd you get the money for it? That's what I want to know. From the inheritance, remember? I replied. So, I sent thank you gifts to relatives who had helped us. I began, and upon hearing this, my sister frowned. All you got was that dirty shed, she remarked. Yes, that's true. But you can't sell that for money. However, there was a safe inside it, and that's where the real inheritance was. A safe? A real inheritance? I carefully explained to her about the watches in the safe, all valuable items collected by my father as a hobby during his lifetime. However, I didn't know their exact value. On the other hand, the remaining savings were about $100,000. Considering he was a business owner who could retire early, that amount seemed small, leading me to think he might have invested a lot in those watches. If they're valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax, my mother had said after seeing the contents of the safe. What should I do, Mom? When I asked, my mother thought for a moment and advised, things like this always come out. You should declare it properly. How? Well, let's ask that lawyer we spoke to recently. So I consulted the lawyer again, and I was told that if you inherit valuables, the inheritance tax is determined by their value. At that time, I was also told that a certified public accountant could handle it for me. As a result, it was found that the watches alone were worth at least $500,000. With watches this valuable, you'll have to pay inheritance tax. How should I pay it? I asked. The lawyer suggested, how about keeping the ones you're emotionally attached to and selling the rest? Certainly, it didn't make sense to me, who didn't know the value, to hold on to such expensive watches. I'd rather someone who understands their worth have them. With that thought, I sold some of the watches, used the money from the sale to pay the inheritance tax, and sent thank you gifts to the relatives who had helped us. Those thank you gifts were the gift cards my sister was talking about. By the way, what I kept were items like the pocket watch my father often wore. I showed my sister the pocket watch as I told her this story. This one isn't expensive, but it holds the most memories for me. However, my sister frowned upon hearing my story. What? You don't have any left? She questioned. No, there are still some in the safe. Where's the safe? I explained. It's at Mom's. The safe is too big for this house. It's the one Dad used at his company. My sister looked away, seeming deep in thought. I felt uneasy seeing her like this, but right after that, she stood up and said, I'm leaving. Now that I know where the money came from, and left. Considering how money-minded my sister is, I thought she might demand some of the money from the watch sales. I was relieved she left without making a fuss. However, in my relief, I forgot the unease I had felt earlier. My sister isn't that understanding, and I had forgotten that. I was reminded of this late that night when I got a call from my mother. Chelsea, it's urgent. Come over right away. What happened, Mom? It's just really bad. My mother said, frantic and unclear. My husband and I rushed to my mother's house, and as we approached, we noticed something strange. The area around my parents' house was lit up in red. What's going on? The reason became clear as we got closer. Several police cars were parked outside my parents' house. I navigated through the crowd and called out to my mother. What happened, Mom? According to her, it was after 9 p.m., and feeling tired, she had gone to bed already. Soon after, she heard strange noises, sounds like someone searching for something coming from beyond the door. Oh, it's a burglar, my mother instantly thought. However, she was the only one in the house, feeling helpless. She decided to escape through the window. Looking back, she saw the light of a flashlight moving inside the house. This is definitely a burglar, she was convinced. Running to the neighbor's house, she urgently said, Help. There's a burglar. Hearing this, the neighbor immediately came out. They too saw the swinging light my mother was pointing at and called the police, thinking it was a burglar. However, it wasn't a burglar at all. It was my sister who had sneaked into the house to rummage through the safe after hearing my story. Neither my mother nor the neighbor had any way of knowing this. Soon, the police arrived, and naturally, my sister was shocked. Realizing she was in trouble, she tried to make a quick escape. Of course, it's her own family home, so there's no need to run. Yet, in her panic, my sister thought she had to escape. In her rush, she bumped into the open door of the safe. Just then, the already unstable safe toppled over, falling right onto her as she tried to flee. So, Portia got trapped under it. Yes, that's what happened. Is she okay? I asked. She was taken to the hospital by ambulance, but she keeps saying her leg hurts. What on earth was she thinking? I was truly dumbfounded. Afterward, my mother and I apologized to the police officers who had come to help, feeling bad for calling so late. I also phoned my sister's husband. Wait, you're saying Portia broke into her own family home and got injured? He questioned. Yes, that's correct. What is Portia doing? She doesn't even do housework. I'm really sorry about my sister. That's it. I'm filing for divorce. Divorce? Actually, according to my sister's husband, she had racked up a considerable amount of debt. Apparently, she had been spending a lot on brand name items, and he had just found out. They had a huge fight, and in the end, my sister stormed out of the house, saying, I'll borrow from Mom and pay it back. Turns out she had already used the $100,000 she inherited to pay off her debts. Still short, she came to me to scrounge for more money. Learning about the contents of the safe led to her actions, which in turn led to this whole mess. No wonder her husband was furious. In the end, my sister, who had fractured her leg, was hospitalized. Her husband came to the hospital and started talking about divorce. Naturally, my sister made a scene. I'm not getting a divorce. Absolutely not. But it was too late. Her husband had brought the divorce papers. Seeing them, she had no choice but to sign. Now she's lying in her hospital bed stunned. There's a part-time job magazine next to her, so she's probably planning to start working part-time to pay off her debts. That would be a relief for me. As for me, I decided to move back to my parents' home after all the commotion. Of course, I'm worried about my mother, but there's another reason. I found out I'm pregnant. My husband and I talked it over and decided to move back home and have my mother help us with the children and childcare. I wish I could have told my father about the pregnancy while he was alive, but I'm sure he would be happy for us. So I'm looking forward to giving birth to a healthy baby. I am Helen Collins, a 29-year-old who works at the local library in an obscure small town. My life is characterized by simplicity, perhaps too simple for some, but it is uniquely mine. Being the quiet type, I've always found solace in the company of books rather than the clamor of the outside world. The library, an old and cozy building with creaky floors and weathered shelves, is my sanctuary. Despite its imperfections, it is perfect to me. Each day at 8 a.m., I'd open the library doors, turn on the lights, and savor the familiar scent of books. This routine, although repetitive, never loses its charm. My parents passed away when I was young, leaving me in the care of my grandmother. She was a kind soul who encouraged my love for reading and learning. However, she's no longer here, and I find myself alone in the world. No siblings, no close relatives, just me and my small world. Good morning, Helen. Mr. Jenkins, a regular visitor, greets me as he strolls in. He's an elderly man who spends his days immersed in history books. I reciprocate the greeting with a smile and inform him of the new shipment of history books that arrived yesterday. The day unfolds with familiar faces coming and going. I assist a group of kids in finding books for their school project. Recommend a romance novel to Mrs. Harrison, and guide Mr. Thompson to the science fiction section. It's a quiet life, but one that brings me comfort. Then, everything changes on the day Jack enters my life. He walks into the library looking for a book, but he doesn't fit the typical profile of a library visitor. His crisp suit and confident stride set him apart. Can you help me find a book? He asks, his voice smooth and inviting. Of course. What are you looking for? I reply, attempting to maintain composure. It's a novel. The Great Gatsby, I believe, he says, and I lead him to the classics section. As I hand him the book, our hands brush briefly, sending a jolt through me. It's a simple touch, but it lingers in my mind. Thank you, Helen, he says, reading my name tag. I'm Jack. It's nice to meet you. This brief encounter marks the beginning of a profound change, a love I thought would last a lifetime and a journey that would take me from the quiet life I knew into a world of chaos and betrayal. Little did I know that life doesn't come with a warning label, and sometimes we just have to learn the hard way. Following that first meeting, Jack becomes a frequent visitor to the library. Despite not appearing to be the reading type, he consistently seeks book recommendations and engages in conversations with me. One day, as I struggle with a box of newly arrived books, he offers to help, and our interactions grow longer with each visit. I discovered that Jack was involved in his family's real estate business, and he proved to be easy to talk to. For the first time in a while, it felt like someone was genuinely interested in me. Then, one day, he surprised me with an invitation. Helen, would you like to have dinner with me tonight? His eyes held a hopeful expression. Taken aback, I asked, like a date? He smiled and confirmed, yes, like a date. Despite the unfamiliar territory, there was something about him that made me want to say yes. Okay, sure. I'd like that, I replied, attempting to keep my voice steady. We chose a cozy but not fancy restaurant in town. Over dinner, we talked about everything and nothing, and for a few hours, I forgot about my typically solitary life. Walking home, Jack expressed, I had a really great time tonight, Helen. You're very different from the people I usually meet. Unsure of how to respond, I simply smiled. He continued, I'd like to see you again. Would that be okay? I nodded, yes, I'd like that. From then on, we started seeing each other more regularly, going out to dinner or taking walks. It felt nice to be part of something beyond books and quietness. Before long, I found myself falling hard for him. Jack was charming, attentive, and made me feel special. When he proposed, I didn't hesitate to say yes. Looking back, I wish I had seen the signs, known that his charm masked something less pleasant. Love has a way of blinding you, making you ignore warning signs. I was deeply in love, or at least I believed I was. After Jack and I got engaged, things began to change. It started with his disapproving parents, who considered me beneath their son due to my lack of wealth. Meeting them at their opulent house for dinner was nerve-wracking. Margaret and Richard made it clear they didn't like me, questioning my suitability for Jack. Despite their disapproval, Jack stood up for me, strengthening my love for him. Before our wedding, his parents insisted on a prenuptial agreement, claiming it was a formality. With little to lose, I agreed without fuss. After marriage, I moved into Jack's house, a gift from his parents that they still treated as theirs. His parents frequented the house unannounced, issuing orders without hesitation. I refrained from causing trouble, silently enduring their constant reminders that nothing in the house was mine. Jack changed too, no longer the man I fell in love with. He began joining in on his parents' jokes at my expense, and one evening, I faced the dilemma of choosing an outfit for a family event and sought Jack's opinion. This one makes you look less drab, he said, laughing. His words stung. It felt like he transformed into a different person around his parents. The support I once received had vanished. Instead, he joined in their laughter. Living in that house became exhausting, and I felt like an outsider, a guest unwelcome in my own home. Despite hoping for improvement, the situation only worsened. The stress took a toll on my health, resulting in severe stomach pains. Ignoring them proved futile, and one day I collapsed at the library. Waking up in the hospital, the doctor attributed it to stress, keeping me hospitalized for a few days. Jack neither visited nor called, leaving me feeling utterly alone. Unexpectedly, a notary arrived with life-changing news. My almost forgotten great aunt had passed away, leaving me a fortune of $30 million. The sudden windfall transformed my status from the impoverished library girl to someone with significant wealth. When Jack and his parents learned of my inheritance, they visited, showering me with smiles and sweetness. "Darling, we're so happy for you." Margaret feigned concern. Richard chimed in, "We're a family. We should support each other." Skeptical of their sudden change, I'd overheard their conversation outside my room. Their true intentions became clear. They viewed me as a means to secure their financial future. Disturbed by their greed, I knew I had to escape their clutches and regain control of my life. Leaving the hospital, I returned home to find Jack and his parents waiting, playing the roles of a caring family. They expressed worry and curiosity about my inheritance. Jack, the man I thought I loved, had become unrecognizable. "When do you get the inheritance?" he asked eagerly. Realizing the depth of deception, I replied, "Soon, but it's not something you need to worry about." Jack, however, asserted the idea of marital entitlement. That night, haunted by their insincere concern and greed, I couldn't sleep. Fueled by years of frustration, I began documenting every detail of their actions and words. The next morning, armed with evidence, I met with a lawyer. Shocked by the situation, he'd assured me that the prenuptial agreement would protect my interests. Empowered by this revelation, I returned home to find Jack and his parents in the living room. "There she is, our brave girl," Richard greeted with a falsely warm smile. Clutching my purse, I gathered the courage to speak. "I have something to say," I announced, my voice unwavering. The room fell silent as I declared, "I'm filing for divorce." The shock rippled through the room, and Margaret erupted in anger, threatening legal action to claim a share of my inheritance. I delved into my purse and retrieved a copy of the prenuptial agreement. "Actually, you can't. This states that neither of us can claim the other's property in case of divorce," I calmly pointed out. For the first time, they were left speechless, and I seized control of the situation. Standing up, I declared, "I'm leaving. I don't want any of you to contact me." Walking out of that house, their shouts and insults trailed behind me. It was the most challenging thing I'd ever done, but as I drove away, a weight lifted off my shoulders. I felt free from their disdain and manipulation. For the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. Despite uncertainties about the future, I rented a small apartment in the city. It wasn't extravagant, but it was mine. A sense of peace washed over me, and even though I was still dealing with the divorce, I felt equipped to handle it. One day, the lawyer called with information about my great-aunt's will. Intrigued, I inquired, "What about it?" He revealed a condition. I had to use a portion of my inheritance for a charitable cause, fulfilling my great-aunt's final wish. Surprised, I learned she was a philanthropist, and it felt like a sign, pushing me in a new direction. I started researching charities and causes, seeking something meaningful. That's when I discovered a small organization aiding women victims of domestic abuse. Touched by their cause, I contacted them, met with Linda, and decided to fund a new shelter. A few weeks later, at the shelter's opening, the atmosphere buzzed with hope and gratitude. Among the attendees, I spotted a familiar face, Sarah, an old colleague from the library. Reconnecting with her felt like pieces of my life falling back into place. The days blended together as I immersed myself in the rewarding work at the shelter, finding a new sense of purpose. Unexpectedly, my phone rang, displaying a number I hadn't seen in a while. Jack. With a mix of emotions but curious, I answered. "Hello, Jack." He urgently requested a meeting, claiming he made a huge mistake and wanted me back. Sitting across from him at a public coffee shop, he seemed different, defeated, and almost pitiful. "Helen, I made a huge mistake. I want you back. I've realized how much you mean to me," he confessed. Looking at him, I felt nothing but contempt. "Why now, Jack?" His sigh revealed. My parents controlled everything. They were the reason our marriage failed. I was weak, but I'm different now. A surge of anger enveloped me. "You blame your parents, but you stood by while they treated me like dirt. You laughed with them, Jack, I asserted. He reached for my hand, but I pulled away. Please, Helen, I know I was wrong. I've changed, he pleaded. Staring at him, I saw the man I once loved, but now I felt nothing for him. Changed or not, it's too late. I feel nothing for you, Jack, nothing but contempt. His face fell, and for a brief moment, I glimpsed the man I married, but it faded. I'm sorry, Jack, I've moved on. I have a life now, a purpose. There's no place for you in it, I said firmly. He nodded slowly, a look of resignation on his face. I understand. I just had to try. Leaving the coffee shop, I felt the weight lift off my shoulders. It was truly over. The next day, an event took place at the shelter. A local artist had donated a sculpture to be unveiled in the garden. Surrounded by people who supported and believed in me, I felt a sense of belonging. Sarah, my old colleague from the library, stood beside me. You've done something amazing here, Helen, she said, smiling. The artist revealed the sculpture, a figure of a woman reaching up to the sky, symbolizing hope, strength, and new beginnings. Applause filled the air, and for a moment, everything felt right in the world. Linda, the woman who had helped me, approached. Helen, this is just the beginning. There's so much more we can do. Looking around at hopeful faces, I knew she was right. This was my new beginning, and I was ready to embrace it fully. My new life was busy and fulfilling. Each day at the shelter brought new challenges and rewards. My confidence grew, and for the first time in years, I felt in control of my destiny. I even started taking self-defense classes, something I never imagined doing before. One day, as I left the shelter, I saw a car parked outside. My mother-in-law, Margaret. Stepping out, she said, Helen, we need to talk. Her voice was softer than I'd ever heard. I have nothing to say to you, Margaret. I replied, my voice steady. Please just hear me out. I've realized how wrong we were, she pleaded. I stopped and looked at her. She seemed genuine, but I couldn't forget the past. What do you want, Margaret? I want to apologize. I treated you terribly. I've lost my son because of it, and I don't want to lose you too. You were like the daughter I never had, she said, her eyes glistening with tears. I felt a pang of sympathy, but I pushed it away. Margaret, you made my life a living hell. An apology won't change that. I've moved on, and I suggest you do the same, I said firmly. She reached out to me, but I stepped back. Please, Helen, I know I can't undo the past, but I want to make things right. I shook my head. It's too late for that. Goodbye, Margaret. As I walked away, I felt her gaze on my back, but I didn't look back. I had learned to stand up for myself, and there was no going back to the way things were. The next day, I received a letter from Jack's lawyer. He was contesting the divorce settlement. I wasn't surprised, but I was ready. Meeting with my lawyer, Rachel, she reassured me. He's got no leg to stand on, Helen. The prenuptial agreement is clear. He's just trying to intimidate you. I nodded. I'm not afraid of him anymore. Let's fight this. The court date arrived, and I walked in with my head held high. Jack was there with his lawyer, and for a moment our eyes met. There was a flash of the old Jack, the one I had loved, but it vanished quickly. The judge listened to both sides and then made her decision. The prenuptial agreement stood, and Jack's claims were dismissed. I felt a surge of relief and triumph. After the court session, Jack approached me. Helen, I'm sorry. I was wrong, he said, his voice low. I looked at him, seeing the man I once loved but now felt nothing for. Goodbye, Jack. Take care of yourself, I said and walked away. As I left the courtroom, I felt a sense of closure. That chapter of my life was finally over, and a new one was just beginning. At the shelter, we were planning a fundraiser, and it was taking all my attention. The support from the community was overwhelming, and I felt a deep sense of gratitude. The night of the fundraiser arrived, and the place was buzzing with energy. People from all walks of life had come to support our cause. As I looked around, I realized how far I had come, from a quiet, timid woman to someone who stood up for herself and others. Helen, you did it. This is amazing, Sarah said, coming up to me. I smiled. We did it. And there's so much more to do. As the event went on, I felt a sense of accomplishment and purpose. This was my life now, and I was exactly where I was meant to be.